All right, welcome to part 2 of the AMCAS introduction. In the first part, we went over the basics of how the application works and got into course entry. And now we're going to move on to work and activities. This is the part where you have an opportunity to share with medical schools all of your work experiences and activities. You can add up to 15 entries in this section. For most activities, you're required to list a contact person and either a telephone number or an email so that medical schools can go back and verify this information if they choose to. You can include repeated experiences, so instead of entering, say, a summer job 3 times, you can list it as one experience and have the 3 separate date spans listed there. You can enter up to actually 4 separate date ranges for a single experience. So if you did maybe multiple mission trips, that might be a good way to do it. You can also enter future dates up to the start of your potential matriculation. So if you're applying this summer and you're starting a research project or you're starting a part-time or a full-time job that will extend all the way into the application cycle, you can list anticipated hours. Be careful of that because anticipated and planned activities may not hold the same weight as already completed activities, but we can talk in an individual meeting about how to maximize timetables for efficiency and effectiveness there. Here's an example of what a typical experience description would look like. This was your experience at the health center. This was where it was. This was the population you dealt with. And this is a little about what you did. Now, you are able to identify up to 3 experiences as your most meaningful, describing how you feel about the experience, not just what you did. So you want to focus on how it was transformative or the impact it made. And this is a little bullet point of the differences. Now, these are the character limits for AMCAS, so they may differ a little bit in other application cycles. And these character limits were based on the 2016 app. They haven't come out and told me how many are going to be on the 2017 yet. There are 700 characters for the basic description, and once you click that it's the most meaningful, you get nearly double the characters to discuss it. The typical experience description is more resume-like, more to the point. You can use, and when I say bullets, I mean just kind of brief statements, not necessarily a complete narrative. It's always better if you do. You can't use bullet points because formatting isn't allowed in these, the same way in your personal statement formatting isn't allowed. But for the most meaningful, it's a thoughtful reflection. How was it transformative? How did it change you? Wow, those are the same things. How did it lead or affirm your decision to enter medicine? Try to be creative, unique, and have a voice as opposed to just a description. So this was the exact same experience that was just described in the basic field earlier, and this is what it might mean for most meaningful. I'm not going to hang out here because you can pause it and read it at your own leisure. The 6th section of the application for you is where you can enter contact information about who will be submitting letters on your behalf. You will indicate which type of letter will be sent for each entry. Everything that you're going to get from UNC, because we do not have a committee letter or a letter packet service, so everything you submit for AMCAS will be an individual letter. You can have up to 10 letter entries. You can also mix and match which letters go to which school. Best possible scenario is 5. You really don't want to do much more than that because you don't want your letter packet to become burdensome for the admissions committee to read. And the best case scenario for that is 2 hard science, 1 non-science, 1 physician's letter, and 1 personal reference. For your 2 hard science, if you have significant research, your PI needs to be one of them. For your non-science, it can be humanities, it can be foreign languages, it can be social sciences. For your physician's letter, it needs to be somebody that you have shadowed. Personal reference is not always required, but some schools like to see it, and in general, that tends to be a work supervisor or someone who can assess your non-cognitive character traits outside of the academic classroom setting. Remember, you can submit your AMCAS application prior to all of your letters being in. Many medical schools require that letters of evaluation are on official letterhead and bear the signature of the author. AMCAS will take whatever your professor or evaluator sends, but the medical schools may like to see that it is on letterhead, and the signature is absolutely necessary. Now, there are resources on the pre-health website, prehealth.unc.edu, resources for both students, information that you can submit to the letter writer so that they can write a more salient letter of evaluation for you. But there are also resources for faculty members and for evaluators who may not be familiar with the process on what traits medical schools are hoping will be assessed in a letter of evaluation. From everything that you plug in, it will then generate into a PDF for your letter request matching form. This is a unique letter ID for your letter, for this cycle, for that person. It makes sure that everything is paired up correctly in your AMCAS application. There are also instructions for the letter writer on how they can submit the letter. Now we're going to move on to the medical school section. This is where you select the schools you are applying to. You can find schools by state, deadline date, or program type. Once you select a school, additional information about that institution's participation in AMCAS letters and the AAMC facilitated background checks will be displayed. The deadline dates are also shown on the screen after you select a school. You won't be able to select a school if their deadline has already passed. Also remember that you cannot select multiple programs within the same school, but you can select different programs through different schools. For example, if you're wanting to apply to UNC's MD-PhD program, you cannot also apply to their MD program, but you can apply to ECU's MD program and UNC's MD-PhD program. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the essays. I'm not going to cover this too intently because I did an entire workshop on it, and there is a 20-minute YouTube video available on the pre-health website about how to draft your personal statement. This is really only going to be the basics of entering it into the system. For AMC, you'll be provided 5,300 characters, which is about 1 page, single-spaced. For ADSAS and ACOMAS, that's 4,500 characters. And for CASPA, the physician assistant portal, that's 5,000. Feel free to click the help text on that page if you want suggestions about how to think about what to think on for your statement, but I have some examples in the next slide too. I recommend that you type directly into this field and don't cut and paste, because remember, no formatting is allowed. So formatting errors may occur if you do that. No changes may be made in this section once the application has been submitted. If you're applying to an MD-PhD program, when you click that button, you'll also have to complete 2 additional essays, and I think the character limit is about double for those. 1 on your motivations for pursuing an MD-PhD and 1 detailing your research experiences. Something to think about, but not necessarily state, is what medicine can offer that other professions cannot. For instance, if you just want to help people, you can do that as a teacher or a social worker. What draws you specifically to medicine? Make it creative, unique, and reflective of you. Remember that the personal statement is the main representation of your personality in the entire application, so convey your passion. Get feedback from multiple perspectives. Start early, start often, and read lots of examples of personal statement essays before you start. Here are some resources available in the resource library. That's 242, wherever we hold drop-ins here in Career Services every day. From 1 to 4, you can come take a look at these personal statement books. They are all available for purchase for probably dirt cheap, and the NAAHP Right for Success is a compilation from Health Professions Advisors. Finally, the last section is the standardized test section. Mcat scores are automatically released to AMCAS. If you have already received your score, you should verify that it captured correctly in your application. You can submit your AMCAS application without Mcat scores, but you should indicate your intended future Mcat testing date and keep that information updated throughout the application process. This is especially important if you already have an Mcat score in your application, because medical schools would have no other way of knowing that you've planned a second sitting and may make their decision based only on the score they have on file for you. If you don't indicate that you plan to take another future test date, that's exactly what could happen. Remember that beginning in 2015, the AMCAS updated their Mcat scores, and this is a breakdown of the system. I've already covered that with most of you, but there is information available in more detail at aamc.org/Mcat. Score breakdowns and confidence bands will appear in your AMCAS application. Now, any old Mcat scores given will also be affiliated with a percentile rank. They will be listed in reverse chronological order. Now, as you're beginning to finish up your application, in order to submit, you're required to indicate your agreement to the certification statement. You will also pay a processing fee. These fees are based on the 2016 cycle, $160 just for submitting AMCAS in general, and then $37 for each additional school. These fees change, so do be sure to check the site for any updates that may be made for the 2017 cycle. We're coming up on the home stretch. Hope to finish this all up in this video. After submission, we're going to talk about verification, post-submission changes, criminal background checks, and multiple accept data. Applications are placed in the verification queue as soon as AMCAS receives your submitted electronic application and all of your required official transcripts. When requesting transcripts from your registrar, use the official transcript request form that is generated from within your AMCAS application. It looks very similar to the letter request matching form that I just showed you. The form helps AMCAS match transcripts accurately. Now, I've spoken to our UNC registrar, and I do not believe we are verified for e-transcripts, even though technically they can email transcripts. So it's always best to just request a hard copy be mailed to AMCAS. Verification process takes about 6 weeks from the time an application reaches the status of ready to review. In order to ensure this process goes as smoothly as possible, check the AMCAS instruction manual and watch the video tutorials. In order to verify an application, AMCAS does a line-by-line comparison of all the coursework you entered in your application to what is on your official transcript, and they use that to calculate your AMCAS GPAs. AMCAS posts processing updates on the application sign-in page almost every morning. There are also processing updates on Twitter, so you can follow at AMCAS Info or visit the AMCAS Twitter page for regular updates. This is a timetable of what the verifications look like over recent years, 2016 and 2015. I'm not showing you 2014 because it would freak you out. There were times in the 2014 cycle where it took upwards of 9 weeks to process an application, but they've honed a couple of their processing techniques and sent more complicated applications to more seasoned reviewers, and they have really cut down on the processing time, so everybody's been pretty happy the last couple of cycles. Only these items on this list can be updated or changed in your application after it has been submitted. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. You can pause it and review these in more detail if you need. Participating schools have run checks on criminal background. Most of these are not done until at least the accepted or very end of the wait list. Criminal background checks are run on students accepted into an early decision program as soon as they are accepted, and on students accepted under regular admission after January 1. Background checks are run on applicants placed on an alternate list after May 15th and only at the request of the medical school. You will have 10 days to review your report before a medical school sees it, and that is done at no additional charge to you. Multiple accept data. Medical schools cannot view the number or names of other schools that an applicant has applied to. In February of the application cycle, medical schools will be able to see multiple accept data, meaning for any applicant they have issued an acceptance to, they will then be able to see which ones are holding multiple acceptances. But remember, at this point, they still can't see at where. For more information about these reports, you can take a look at the application and acceptance protocols, formerly titled traffic rules. This is a little breakdown of the cost of applying for your primary application and additional schools. A question I get very frequently is, how many schools should I apply to? Well, where would you feel comfortable for 4 years? Where do you want to end up for medical school? And how much can you afford? Because remember, this $2,000 for about 15 schools is before we have even begun to factor in interview costs, travel costs for interviews. Beware of automatically issued secondaries. There are a few schools, Duke, who are notorious for sending a secondary application the minute your primary hits their system, whether you are a viable candidate or not. So triage by order of importance when those come in. Here are a few slides in particular about the fee assistance program for those who without other financial assistance might not otherwise be able to apply. One important note, fee assistance program benefits are not retroactive, so you can't take the MCAT, apply for them, and then ask to be reimbursed for the MCAT, but you do get many benefits if you register and apply ahead of time. You get reduced MCAT registration fees, MCAT prep materials. You get a free version of the MSAR, which is the medical school admissions requirements. Everybody's probably heard me talk about that when they're talking about their school selection. It's an amazing online resource that helps you sort by 90th percentile to 10th percentile MCAT and GPA range, mission statements, admissions requirements, matriculation reports on in-state versus out-of-state applicants and matriculants. You get an AMCAS fee waiver, and you get discounted access to Pivio, which is a central distribution service, and it's kind of an e-portfolio for when you begin your residency stuff later on. You may apply if you are a U.S. citizen or U.S. national, if you are DACA, if you are a lawful permanent resident. Award approval is tied directly to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services poverty level guidelines if you and your family make 300% or less for the 2015 national poverty level. Here are the dates of awardees. And here's a little bit more information through AAMC to learn more about it. To apply, you will complete and submit the online application, and that will be evaluated and the outcome of your application within 3 weeks. Avoid delays in your application. Begin as soon as you can. Keep your contact information up to date in the event that AMCAS has to notify you that there are changes or corrections that need to be made. Enter all of your coursework exactly as it appears on your transcript, and be sure all fields are complete. Beat the transcript deadlines. Send your transcript request as soon as you begin the application. As soon as spring grades are posted, get your transcripts in. Other institutions that have already posted your grades from previous semesters, previous summers, previous early college, you can go ahead and submit those now as soon as you begin, well, as soon as the application goes live. Here are some additional resources: the AMCAS tutorial, the instruction manual, quick start guide, their Twitter page, their YouTube channel. There are a wealth of resources. Oh yeah, and the most important resource of all, prehealth.unc.edu.